This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present a collection of fandoms and exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content, and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains loose spoilers from Swiftynomics with mentions of Ahsoka and Star Wars. For full list, please see show notes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to ACOFAE, your weekly deep dive into the fantasy, literature, and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are kicking off International Women's Month
by discussing women's impact on the economy and society. But I feel like this isn't a new topic for people who have been with us the whole time or catching up on back catalogs. I am a nerd for the economy. I would have double majored in economics if I didn't want to graduate sooner. But I feel like if you have been joining us, I just think that we're always discussing our impact on both the economy and society through different fandoms and different lenses. And it's always just kind of sprinkled into our conversation. But I do think that it felt like an appropriate time, even though every time is appropriate, for us to discuss our impact on the world.
Our impact on the world, our impact on the economy. I had an idea on how to do this, and I pitched it to Jess, and she agreed. And then we looked at the concert ticket date, and we just thought, oh my goodness. Well, so
not to age us or anything. We are very young.
We're very young here. However, I posed the question to Jessica Marie, and that was, do you remember the first time that you made an economic impact on your community because something was coming to town? Like some event was happening, a concert was happening, a circus was coming, like something, and it was a special event, was coming to town, and like your parents or your friends or like somebody made it a big deal, a bonding deal, and you remember it to this day and you went. That was the question. And the answers are wonderful.
Well, I remember two of mine in very different veins. And I feel like the one that I loosely remember, it was my first concert. It came to town. It was amazing. It was in sync. And I went with my neighbor and her parents. They got the tickets and we went, and we had a time, we got the concert shirts, all the things. But I think the first time I remember making an impact and making like this girlhood experience was when Britney Spears came to town. And again, I say came to town. I didn't live in this town. I still lived about like 45 minutes, an hour outside of where she came. But I remember going for the merch and I still remember the outfit that I wore because I remember nobody else was going to have it because I got the top and the skirt in Spain when I went. So I knew like nobody was going to have my outfit. And it was so fun. I remember going to the merch stand and they had shirts for younger kids too. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get one for my little sister and we're going to match. And then we would just say like what we would call like, oh, let's play twin on the weekend. And we would just walk around in our Britney shirts. But I think it was the first time that I made this like conscious economic decision to drive an hour away from my hometown. I went with a friend. I got ready. I did the merch. We had a car. We were driving. We didn't rely on our parents. Like the money was earned by us. I feel like it was Britney Spears. What about yours?
Well, shocking, probably no one. Mine was also Britney Spears. Specifically, mine was the Drive Me Crazy tour on March 3rd, 2000. She came to my town, and my best friend at the time and I were inside the venue, and we won front row tickets, and I saw that show front row, and he and I, yes, it was a guy, he and I made the front page of the paper. It was amazing. But my parents and his parents made it such a big deal, like we were best friends at the time. And so it was me, my best friend, his sister, and then their cousins. It was like the four of us. And they were older than us.
Did they wind
so
up getting tickets too?
They got tickets. They didn't win for our tickets though. So we were separated. It was a huge thing. Oh my gosh. Cause it was a difficult time. Communication was not what it was during this time period. So it was wild. We had to find each other afterwards. It was crazy. It was crazy. But our parents, our parents rented a limo, like took us out to dinner. I went with my mom and like I got a new outfit. We got like our hair and our nails done. Like it was an event to go, and it was very like important to me. It was very important to him, and we were huge fans. And like our parents kind of like really respected that and like kind of played into that. And looking back on it, I wonder if that is because they didn't have that experience growing up. However, they grew up in an era where they could see all these amazing bands for like $5 in like someone's fucking basement. Don't ever ask your parents. Don't ever ask your parents about what bands they saw as kids and how much tickets were. It'll make you fucking sick.
I'm absolutely going to ask your mom next time I see her.
It'll make you fucking sick, the stories that they will tell you. Jesus Christ. Anyway, that was my first experience with this. And looking back on it, it was a huge economic boost to the town. It kind of like people were talking about our town. I could not believe that this huge act was coming there. It was amazing. It made me feel special in this small little town because this huge act was coming, and it was a pleasure and it was exciting and it was a joy to like be out and about, like in your new outfit, walking around before you get to the venue, like checking in and like seeing all of this stuff. It was such a wonderful experience. And then like the separate experience of like, it was like a contest or whatever that the manager was running inside the venue. It was like, if you see us and we see that you're huge fans, we're going to take pictures of you for Britney's scrapbook, and then we'll give you these front row tickets. And my friend had a Britney Barbie doll that he had strung on a necklace around his neck, and he had different outfits for it, and he could change them out. And it was a whole thing. And the guy taking the pictures was like, "That's amazing!" Like shining, and hold up the dolls. Like it was this whole thing. And we got front row tickets, and it was crazy. And the other crazy thing was too that he and I were both like, no one is gonna believe us. Like it was a time. It was a place. Like who's gonna believe us? But then we were on the front page of the paper, and it was like everyone believed us. It was like we had all of this proof. So that was such a huge economic impact. Now, that is both Jessica Marie and I separately. Jessica Marie, now together, you and I
was just telling, we've done a few. I was telling someone our first concert we did together today.
Together, you and I have traveled to many states to attend many different genres of music. And it is been a wonderful experience every single time. Now, our first concert, would you like to share that?
When we went to UCF.
Of course.
Of course. I mean, it was a celebration of sorts. So a variety of activities were involved, precursing the event itself. But again, it's an event. It was a moment. We got ready. I mean, we went with two other of our friends that we still know today. And it was a girlhood experience if there ever was one. I mean, we had you were driving per usual, and the music was blasting. The windows were down. We were having a time. I lost a shoe. It was wonderful. It was magical. And I still love that we get to share those experiences all these years later, because even all these years later, a couple of the people that we still love to travel for still actually go on tour. And then it's just a matter of us either like, am I coming to you? Or are you coming here? What are we doing? This is so fun. We haven't gone to this place before. And sometimes, it's interesting to see the trend we talk about how the economy is driven in different cities. We've seen such a shift in people thinking you are limited to staying in the town that you live in seeing an artist. And I feel like it's become more popular to travel for artists that you like. And I think artists are picking up on that too, because you have, people who have residencies, you have people who just have, set in one city, you have, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go on a tour. One of the artists that we know, they just announced, okay, I'm only going to do 3 shows, 3 cities this year. It's going to be Long Beach, Philly, and I can't remember the third one off the top of my head. Chicago, but then last year they said, I'm only going to do 1 for the entire year, and it's going to be at Red Rocks. And then you have artists like Harry Styles, who's doing 3 months at Madison Square Garden and 12 days at Wembley Stadium. And then you have others who just choose to do a residency, which Britney Spears also did. And it's very sad if you read her book of how that was dictated also. But then you have people who didn't dictate it. How many times have I seen Gaga in Vegas? And I was fine with it, and I know there's a lot of conversation around both artists who travel to your city and then artists who don't, which forces those travel expenses onto fans. All which to say, it's still driving the economy.
There's a conversation to be had about Harry Styles and ticket prices, and we're going to have that conversation. However, I do want to point out that the economy, when we're talking about the economy, we're not just talking about the United States economy, although that seems like pretty obvious. I'm specifically using the example of when editor Sam and I went to Berlin to see Britney when she was on tour. We were living outside of Munich at the time, and we traveled to Berlin, which, doesn't sound like anything, but it's a son of a bitch when you have to do it without a car and with luggage, and it's a pain. And we did it, and we stayed overnight, and it was this whole huge thing. And we did put our little amount of money into that economy for that weekend that we were there. And that is also part of it. She didn't do other shows. Like if she had done a show closer to us, we would have gone to that, but she did one, I think only one German show, and that was it. It was from Berlin. You either go or you don't. And I think that's part of the conversation. Like Harry Styles is doing all of these stops in New York. You either go or you don't. Like whatever. He doesn't care. Like it is what it is. But the conversation about Harry Styles and ticket prices, I kind of want to use that as a reflection on Taylor Swift and her ticket prices. And just that is, both of those are something that you can speak on almost expertly.
Okay. So I've gone to Harry Styles. I did 2 of his last tour. I think it was 2022. Loved it. It was amazing. I did 2 shows at Madison Square Garden. And Ticketmaster experience was also very different. I bought 1 ticket. I went by myself. I'm kind of just like, I do what I want. I go to a lot of things by myself, but I'm just happy to be in the room. I got through the Great War, went to 2 shows, paid $54.50, I think it was. It was amazing. It was great. Such a different experience this time. Hell, didn't get tickets. I tried. I mean, what are you going to do? And again, there's a lot of conversations going there. Flip it over to Taylor Swift. I feel like everybody villainized Taylor when Ticketmaster crashed, when her ticket prices were all over the place. And I want it to be like noted, if you're following or if you're not aware, her ticket price, she did not lean into dynamic ticket pricing. She locked that. She goes, these are my set ticket prices. Just because there's a high demand, that doesn't fluctuate the ticket price. I've been able to see many of her shows. I went once to 1989, 3 Reputation, and 3 Eras tours, all at Ticketmaster. Her baseline price, I think it was Reputation. Floor seats were $125. I did Eras tour, all at cost, all under $250. 2 of the shows of her Eras tour that I went to, I left the country. Just like you saw Britney in Berlin, I left to see 2 of her shows in Canada. And talking about driving the economy, my money drove Toronto's economy, drove Canada's economy. it was not going to drive the U.S. economy. I tried to go to my more New York shows. I tried to go to the Philly shows, tried to go to the Miami shows because I have family in Florida. I could not, it would not make sense. One ticket on StubHub was more than me leaving the country, getting tickets, staying, eating, all of that, room, board, travel, and coming back. That was the cost of one ticket price for Taylor. And again, it's not Taylor's fault. It was the scalpers. It was the system. It's all the conspiracy theories that you believe that holds with Ticketmaster. Those are true. And I think it was so quick for everybody to villainize Taylor, a woman. And I think this is the first time that I've seen a man getting backlash over their ticket prices when it comes to Harry.
Specifically, they are extremely expensive, correct?
Yeah, I haven't even, I think I tried to sit in the queue a couple times and it said, oh, your ticket prices are going to be between 50 and whatever it was. But nobody ever got, like, I don't recall seeing anybody ever seeing those $50, I use in air quotes, baseline prices because dynamic ticket pricing was not turned off. And essentially what dynamic ticket pricing is, if you're not familiar with Ticketmaster system, if there's a high demand for an artist and a high demand for tickets, you essentially have a baseline price. But if everybody, I mean, it's the definition of inflation and like the economics. If there's high demand, there's going to be a high cost involved with it. And it fluctuates that way if the dynamic ticket pricing isn't turned off. And ultimately, it's not on Ticketmaster. It's on the artist and their team, whatever agreement. And, you could say it's the artist. I do blame the artist to a point because I've seen it be done. I've seen the dynamic ticket pricing turn off. Taylor has done it. Billy has done. I will not resell my tickets unless it's at cost. Oasis has done that too. You cannot resell the tickets. Billy has done. You cannot resell the tickets unless it's the same amount that you paid for. So it's when things can be done, I think that frustrates fans even more because it's not this situation of, well, what's the workaround? There has to be a way. There is a way. We've seen a way. So why isn't that across the board? Well, we live in a capitalist society.
Jessica Marie, tell me about the sentence, girls can't like anything.
Because we can't. They take it away from us all the time. I feel like you see that conversation. Maybe it was last year or the year before. I'll use Ahsoka as an example. Everybody, and I think I remember I told you, I go, this is good. And people are going to hate on it the first time because I think I saw the first 3 episodes at one time. And I go, this is good. And it makes me angry at the other side. I'm not familiar with Star Wars, but it's the origin story of like the quote unquote bad guys. But they're not bad, as we know how every villain origin story is. But it is very female centric. I mean, it's great. And Manny Jacinto's in it, everybody. And it's so funny because I feel like if people don't jump on the conversation in media right away, and it doesn't become this viral thing right away, it's automatically not renewed for another season. Something happens. And that typically happens with content that people, that women love. I say people, that women, or I should say like, and it was funny that it wasn't picked up. Then you see the conversation going online. Like, this is absolutely the female gaze. What is happening? How is it canceled? Why is it canceled? You didn't even give it a chance to breathe and to grow. You automatically wrote it off. And then, Laura, I feel like you can speak to this a lot more too. Again, in the Star Wars vein, when it comes to conversations surrounding Kylo.
Oh, Kylo. Kylo's a very interesting example, and I'm not sure if you're pointing me this way, but this is the way that I'm going to take it. Kylo is an emotional emo boy. He's an emotional emo boy who shows his emotions frequently in public, and while not ashamed of them, it is embarrassing to watch. And if that were a woman, oh no. Oh no, we would not be like, haha.
We're too emotional.
Yeah, that would not fly. And the example of that is we have Laura Dern and her character, stoic as fuck, going down with her ship. Spoilers, I guess. But, stoic as hell. We're not showing emotions there. Kylo's crashing out, screaming more. That's a really interesting example too, because if a woman did that, she would be villainized, and we see women villainized in media constantly. And if we circle back around to Taylor Swift, like that could be the ultimate, villain in the media. She's been planted as that time and time again. And especially now that, we're having this conversation in 2026 in the beginning part of the year. Opalite is still a single, and there are all these different remixes, and they keep saying that Taylor Swift is greedy. Well, she's not greedy enough. She's not greedy enough. There are certain things that I would like that don't exist, that cannot be bought. So she's not greedy enough. That's what I have to say about that. But that conversation exists. She's too greedy. She's a billionaire. What is she doing? Why is she giving all of this? Giving all of this? Why is she giving us all of this? Why is this artist being so generous with their art? They're giving us all of these different variations of her art. She must be selfish and want our money. She must not be wanting to share. That conversation is not being had.
Well, you know what conversation isn't being had also when it comes to being so selfish and taking all of this stuff. And Laura, I know you and I have had these conversations in private too about how women, how much they give back, how much they stimulate the economy. And you know what? You can go ahead and have your own insight. And I'm sure it's part of it too, because people are smart about donating to the communities and donating your money. And you see it firsthand. And yes, you get a tax break. Everybody, if you're going to be given a system, you have to learn how to work the system, right? But if that's the case, you don't see men doing it. You see every city, and it's on record, every city she was donating to, food resources and has stimulated the economy. And I think one of the cities in Ireland, and I'm sure this isn't the only one, I know New Orleans is another one as well. They feel so comfortable and set for 3 years following her tour with the amount that she donated to food kitchens, that they are in a comfortable place, at least for 3 years. One person had that impact because she came to their town. That town welcomed them, and it drove the economy. And that's in addition to the economy that was driven from the artist being there. Beyonce does it too. Beyonce does it internationally. And it goes back to the conversation of people having to travel and also traveling internationally. And it's still more cost effective than staying domestically in the States. But nobody talks about how these artists have stimulated the economy in that way, and in a selfless way, I guess you can say. Again, you're villainized. And I know we talked about this in one of our earlier 2021 episodes. Maybe it was February or March, when I was starting to unlearn my internalized misogyny that I had against Taylor Swift specifically, and seeing certain documentaries. And again, being able, if you take your prejudices away, you could be like, okay, fact, she's kind of badass. She doesn't have to do this. Nobody has to do it. Because again, if we would have more people giving back to the community, more billionaires giving back to society, if they cared enough. She's not being forced to care.
That's such a good point. Because how many men do this? How many men do that? How many male artists on tour do that?
Well, I would think it was just released a list of like the top 10 billionaires, and and they were like the top 10 men billionaires. And the only person within like their lifetime that's given the most, it was like 37% of their income has been donated, was Warren Buffett, and everybody else was under like 1%. Yeah. And not like, and by everybody else on this list of men was under 1%.
Ridiculous.
Of their lifetime.
Ridiculous. I am interested now whenever Taylor decides to go back on tour, if she does decide to go back on tour in the future, not that she has to, oh my gosh, rest, recover, rejuvenate, get married, relax. When she does, if she doesn't give back to the community in the same way that she did during the Eras tour, by golly, you're going to hear about it. That's going to be a news story. I am interested now to see if she has set a standard of behavior that it will be frowned upon if you don't follow. You see what I'm saying? Because Harry's going to be in New York for how long? What's he doing?
Yeah, August through November.
Yeah, what's he going to do?
3 days a week.
What's he going to do? I understand that he is there, but he's also there. He's not traveling.
People are traveling
for him
for this show. Yeah.
So he is in a position to do much more for the city, for his fans in line, all of these things. So I'm interested to see what that looks like, and if there is a set standard, or if that standard is set and only women follow it, or only people of a certain tax bracket. I'm interested in all of this and how these trends play out in the future.
And it's the people under the microscope too, because Taylor's under the microscope, Beyonce's under the microscope, because she was under the microscope hard as hell with Cowboy Carter, and she gave back. She has an active philanthropy, Be Good. I can't remember all of the details of it. But again, you have women under the microscope held to this standard, and they've set their own standard so high that the only people who can outpace them is themselves, But again, men do the bare minimum. Have the confidence of a mediocre white man? Mediocre. And some of this stuff, it's very below the bar. And it's just interesting that it's just so quick to villainize women in everything, despite the continuous giving back to society, to the economy, to these cities.
And to speak more on this, ACOFAE welcomes a very special guest and our new friend, economist Misty Heggeness,
who is the author of her newest release, Swiftynomics, How Women Mastermind and Redefine Our Economy. Welcome, Misty.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we are very excited to talk to you about your book, but we kind of want to start the conversation by saying thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing your expertise on the topic of economics, which is not something that we have covered on the podcast, but which is a love of Jessica Marie, one of our co-hosts right here. So, Jessica, why don't you tell us about economics and why we love pop culture?
Well, I think that for me, everything, obviously, the world operates in economy. And I feel like you've brought up in your book, kind of the stigmas surrounding women in economy, in these spaces, in these fields, in these conversations, which is so interesting when we drive so much of it, especially with you use Taylor Swift, you use Beyonce, you use these pop culture artists to drive the conversation and hone in the importance of the impact that we're making.
Yeah. It's really important. And there's so much going on in today's world with women and women as drivers of consumption and the economy and, economic growth. I'm just thinking now about this week of these few couple of weeks that we've been having of the Olympics and all of these women who are just rocking it and winning all these medals. And it's just fun to see. And, since I'm trained in economics, I see things through that lens, and I just thought it would be fun to write a book about, what that looks like and kind of delineate that for people.
How long did that process take you?
I consider myself a pandemic author in the sense that, I was at home with my family and 10 and 12-year-old and doing a lot of work on looking at what was happening with mothers and paid work. And I started blogging, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And I just decided, I wanted to take on writing a book about the modern woman. I feel like we get so caught up in these stereotypical kind of tropes of how women exist in the world and how we balance work with family. And so I wanted to write a book, and it took me a couple of years to get a book proposal together and to find a publisher and an editor. And so I probably started seriously writing the book in 2022. And here we are in 2026. So it took me about 2 to 3 years to write it. And then the last year has been, it's been with the publisher getting ready for publication.
And of course, your book is Swiftynomics, How Women Mastermind and Redefine Our Economy. And I have to ask, in your book, you go to Taylor Swift's concert. You write about your experience there. And I would like to ask, what is your love of pop culture? Has it always been there? Is this something you have rediscovered? Is something like this always been important to you? I ask because the conversation around women rediscovering the things that they loved as teenagers when they get older and loving it, with their full chest, unabashedly, without shame, is something that I love and find very important. And I am curious if that journey is similar to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that I haven't always been a pop culture geek. Like I'm a super nerdy economist, and I love numbers and statistics and doing research. But I really started paying attention to Taylor Swift in 2019. And as I was thinking about the concepts for this book, I just became more and more had more and more admiration for her career path and the way that she's maneuvered herself in her career. And so I just started following her a lot in what she was doing. And then that just brought me into this whole world of pop culture and, watching all the awards shows and keeping up with the latest, streaming shows and all the things. So it's really, this book has given me an excuse to get really back into pop culture and, thinking about the ways in which the cutting edge trends of society and entertainment really do speak volumes about who we are as people and the state of the world. And so it's just been really fun to be able to explore this space more.
Did you have a favorite part of the process? Because I feel like you have different levels, I'll say Swifties, and then you have some people who are fans that won't necessarily categorize themselves as that type of fan of people who can appreciate Taylor Swift, which is everything is valid. At what point in your process, like you said, it was 2019, you consider yourself a pandemic writer. Was there a lot of back cataloging? Because I know for myself, I think I grew into appreciation the more I did research. I had known her music, but it came with like, wait, she has this documentary. Wait, she's doing this other thing. Like, yeah. What was that experience like? And did you have a favorite part in doing that research?
Yeah. So think about it like that and then exponentially, right? So it became not only like, oh, Taylor Swift has a documentary, let's check that out. And oh my gosh, I didn't know all these things. But then it became, who is the Baywatch? Pamela
Anderson?
Yes, thank you. Pamela Anderson, she has this documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but she just talks about her life from her perspective and the way that she's living her life now. And so I just started getting into that and then just started seeing all of the ways in which, some of the things that are fun to watch are like, you get into football because Taylor is dating this football guy. And so then you start watching like the way in which the football guys show up to the games. They all have their fits now, which, and so I don't know, I just, it was just a ton of fun to kind of explore and with social media and algorithms these days, like you see one thing and you kind of stick on it. And then all of a sudden, like you get all this other stuff. And so, part of the piece that was I would say the funnest for me was just that exploration of this other material that exists about like Taylor's past life and also just all this other material that exists about other women that I wrote about. The other thing too is I just started finding really fun stories about women in the past. So Dolly Parton, there's this podcast, I think, and it's called it's Dolly's America and we're just living in it or something like that. And it tells this whole fun story about Dolly Parton and her life. And so it was really fun to kind of, as somebody who primarily does research using data and numbers, going back and reading and watching some of these stories about really powerful women of our past was a lot of fun.
Well, you speak on Dolly, and it's so interesting because I feel like she's another great example when we talk about philanthropic endeavors that women take on, and kind of just because we want to, just because we care. But you don't have that conversation happening with men in entertainment either. So I didn't know, did you find any research specifically? Because Dolly Parton is very philanthropic. We know that Taylor Swift was through her Eras tour, how she's impacted the cities both on a micro and macro level. Both, it's just interesting. I would love to hear your take on all of that.
Well, I mean, I have a take, but it's not backed up scientifically by any data. But, you think about, okay, so let's talk about the Apple TV series Loot that came out recently, right? And that's all about this woman who divorces her, whatever, billionaire husband. And, he made his money while they were together. So they kind of made it together. And then she's left with all this money. And then she gets I don't know if you guys seen the show, but she gets like the philanthropic branch of the business. And then she goes into philanthropy and like gives away all her money. And, Maya, and I'm not going to know her last name, but from Saturday Night Live is like the main character. So good. But, that's just that's another example where pop culture is really telling us stories about the lived experiences of the people around us. And so, I mean, not everybody, it's not very common that, any of us know millionaires or billionaires, but just in society, you've got Melinda Gates, who started Pivotal Ventures, now divorced from Bill Gates and started Pivotal Ventures. And she's giving out a whole bunch of money really focused on women and advancing women and young women and women's health. I think this Apple TV series Loot is kind of loosely based off of McKinsey, Jeff Bezos' first wife, and she's known for giving away a bunch of money. And so it's unclear to me. So I think, the unscientific part that I will tell you is that, yes, women are much more likely to be philanthropic. They're much more likely to care about their communities. They're much more likely to see value in reinvesting and distributing resources throughout the community. Now, the reason why I say that's not a data-driven response on my end is because this is just what I see. And it's kind of like, you buy a new green car and you go driving down the street and all of a sudden all the cars are green. Like you see all these green cars. And so who knows like how much of that is true. And then the other piece for me is I don't know how much of that is women do it because we want to, or women do it because we're socially conditioned to, because society expects us to be givers and providers and in that way. So I don't know, but it's definitely true that it's much more common to see women acting in that philanthropic way.
Now, you are an economist, and we are thrilled that you are here, and we're talking about your book. I would like to know, because there are so many moving pieces in your book, there are figures and things to look at, and it is very lovely. I have to say the reading experience is very enjoyable. How did you organize this to write it out? How did you decide chapters are going to cover this and this is the data that's going to go here? And also adding to that, how did you find all of this research and pull it to you and decide what was relevant and what was not? Because I'm sure that there is a wide variety of things that you can pull from. So how did you kind of go through this organizational writing process?
That's a really great question. I think I started, so this was a book that I didn't take time off to write this book. So, I had my day job, which is I'm a professor. when I started the book, I wasn't a professor. I was working as a research economist in the federal government. But so I basically wrote this book evenings and weekends. I just started by writing stories that I thought were interesting and that were like fun for me to write. So since I was doing it more or less as an extracurricular activity, if you will, my leisure time, however you want to think about it, I wanted to write it, and it made me happy working on the writing process. And so I just I would come up with ideas, that would focus on a particular thing or person, and I would write those first. And so I think one of the first things I did was just write out the story of the Eras tour because, I went, quote unquote, book research, so I had to go. And so I just wrote that out first, or, towards the beginning, because I wanted to write while I was having that experience before I would forget. And then a lot of the other stuff, when you get more into the middle of the book, it's a lot more meaty in terms of like economic theory. And I try to like merge pop culture with economic theory, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But that's all stuff that, I was trained in. And so those are all, theories and concepts that I just knew because of my training. And so, I think that the more challenging piece there was finding examples in, again, in pop culture and general kind of community that would be interesting to overlay with some of the, more nerdy stuff, so that, I could keep readers engaged in the storyline. But that was also the fun part, because that was like a little bit of the stretch. So, I used this example of Marie Kondo and, her whole like obsession with whatever the Kondo method or whatever it became, where it's like if something doesn't give you joy, you throw it away. And I equate her to the way in which economists today think about the world and their models. And then I go on to, without giving away too much of the book, but then I go on to kind of, bust that myth, both for Marie Kondo and for economists. And so, I don't know, it's just fun. I love pop culture and I love thinking about, and I love economics. And so it just, merging the two together was a lot of fun. And yeah, I don't know how much more I can say about the process. I knew I wanted to focus on women. And so when you think about the lived experiences of women, there's kind of like a lifeline there, right? Like you're a kid, you're a girl, then you're a teenager, then, you're adult, and then you have kids, and then yada, yada. And so part of the book kind of goes in that order of kind of the order of our lives.
One thing you do very well in this book is, like Laura said, everything is laid out. You tie into lyrics. You make everything digestible. And I do think, and I say that in a way as I think that there is a stigma that comes with anything that, when it comes to studying the economy, having economic discussions, there is a stigma that it can be a dry conversation, or yes, some people might think it's overwhelming. I don't know how do you begin to have those conversations? And you have written a book and you have shared data information that intertwines personal stories and stories of people that and collated other people's shared experiences that make it so applicable, where you're like, wait, economy can be like, this can be fun. And I'm that person. Like, I had a professor in undergrad that's where she made me love economics, where I was sharing with Laura earlier. I would love, if I didn't want to graduate so fast, I would have double majored. I'm a nerd for it. I find it so fascinating. But I intertwine my personal experience with being a fangirl, being a feminist, understanding my personal drive, and like, if people just listen to us, we run the world. Just like Beyonce says, who runs the world? Girls. Because we drive so much. And again, like you said, you even have these meteor chapters of the impact that women have staying at home. And that within itself, I think women are also finding themselves and realizing the work that's done outside of the quote unquote 9 to 5, we know that it's a full-time job, and you're finding women building LLCs even under the family moniker. So it shows that drive, and it shows, I mean, I also did a paper where if you break down every role a woman has in the household, those are separate positions that are hired for separate different salaries at big conglomerates and small businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's totally true. I have, you know, on my website, I have my resume or my CV, and on there I have 2003 to the present, and then I say something like, Heggeness Bascunian household, so my last name and my spouse's last name. And I don't know if I say LLC, but something like that. And then I have a motto there that says, raising well-rounded kids since 2008, which is the year my daughter was born. But I think it's so important for women to just, you know, claim all of that work and effort that we do, that's largely invisible, that, you know, we don't directly get paid for, but we disproportionately do it in the household. And yeah, those are skill sets that make us super marketable in the labor market, you know, if employers would recognize them. And I don't know, for me, I'm like, one of the ways to get people to recognize it is I'm going to make the invisible visible by adding it to the list of jobs and skills and qualifications that I've had.
Well, and absolutely. And, you know, small changes like that add up over time. And eventually we can really, really make change in these kind of sectors of life. The invisible kind of like caregiver for our parents, but also, you know, raising children, and also, you know, being a caregiver to our husband is an exhausting kind of situation that is unique to the experience of the women in that situation. And I love that you highlight the mental state that can kind of like put on people, the isolation, and also there's resources, and also women have decided, you know, I'm going to build a community about this because there needs to be help. And if no one is going to do it, then by God, I'm going to do it. And that kind of, you know, strength in numbers kind of situation is also wonderful. And I am interested then in and this is something that, Jessica Marie and I say a lot on ACOFAE, but the idea that like girls can't like anything, like women can't like anything, because as soon as they do, and even though it's making billions and billions of dollars, like the romance genre, it is looked at with disdain and with no respect. Everybody is just turning their nose up at it. And, you know, that is kind of in the same vein as like all of this invisible work that women do, because as soon as you start, you know, listing everything, people kind of go, okay, that's enough. And so, and like, we need to keep talking about these things. And it is so important that we stand up for ourselves over and over and over again. And it is wonderful to have the numbers behind all of this that you give us to kind of reference and look and say, actually, no, though. Because look at all of this data and research that we have here. We are important, even though all of these other factors are trying to make us feel shame about all these things.
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest goals with this book, I mean, I've got a couple of them, but one of them is to really, and it's something that I think that Taylor actually does really well, but it's not internalizing the misogyny, right? It's not internalizing other people's issues with the way that you behave, or other people's issues with the things that you choose to like. You know, I mean, Taylor has always been a huge fan of pink glittering cats, right? And, you know, that's something that society is, you know, you just think about like all the stereotypes about the, you know, single old lady with cats or whatever that historically have floated around. And I think, you know, Taylor's such a great role model because, you know, she's fine with other people, you know, thinking what they think or doing what they want, or, you know, having these opinions, but she's not going to let it change her behavior necessarily. And she's just going to keep on being who she is. And I think there's lots of role models in pop culture today that are like that. So I think Taylor's one. I think Beyonce is one. Clearly from another generation, Dolly Parton is one. If we're thinking about now in the Olympics, I'm really inspired by Alyssa Liu, who she won the gold medal in skating, and her whole story, it's kind of been all over the news, but she basically stepped away from skating when she was, I think, 16, and then came back and said, I want to do this because I really enjoy it, but I want to do it in my way. And, that's the thing that Taylor has consistently done in her career is said, I want to do it in my way. And I think when you approach life with that sort of authenticity, and you try to just focus on you and your interests and what you like, and, stick to that, amazing things can happen. And I just wish that more of us would do that. I mean, it would be great if society wouldn't, continually shame us into, not being passionate about the things that we love. But it's much easier for us to make change within ourselves to say, I'm not going to care what society thinks, versus trying to in the long run, we should change society, but, that's a longer conversation.
But it's interesting you also bring that up because they started playing by their own rules, and that's when their success catapulted. We want to talk about numbers. You have Beyonce when she stopped chasing, and this is my assumption, when she stopped making music for the record label and for the general public and for the radio and the top 40. Yeah. That's when she started selling out stadiums. When Taylor was writing for herself and she said, you know what, I'm going to keep writing new music under Taylor's version. That's when I used to be I've gone to multiple Taylor shows at this point. Laura is aware, and so are our listeners. But I remember for the third show for Reputation, I bought them night of floor seats, $125. Cause it was, the demand was there, but she was doing it on her own accord. You have Sabrina Carpenter, who has been on the scene for over 10 years. She is catapulted doing it her own way. And I feel like that continues to happen. And you talk about the hearts and the glitter and the cats. There was so much backlash with even Taylor's most recent album, The Life of a Showgirl. People eventually came around, but there's always this whiplash effect that you don't always see. But at the same time, numbers don't lie. That's still I think most recently announced her most successful album to date.
Yeah. I mean, I suspiciously wonder whether there's I don't know, some lonely man's apartment building in the middle of somewhere where there's just 2 or 3 sad guys who are angry at the world, and they start spreading the hate on some of this stuff, and it's not really a larger actual phenomenon. It's just that they're so loud. And think about Miley Cyrus. What is the song that she became I don't remember the name of the song, but she became super famous for it. She won an award for it. And I remember I watched that award show and she was like, I finally won. And it's the song that she wrote about her breakup with,
Flowers.
Yes. And that was, I think, her being authentic. She was trying to work through feelings, but that's another example where, that's one of her most successful, I would argue, songs. And it's one that, and she won an award for it. And she went up on stage and she's like, finally. And she's, I had to get this divorce and this breakup and had to just write for me. And she's like, finally. And so there's a lot to be said about this idea of being authentically yourself and just telling everybody else to, go find something else to do. I don't know. You could quote
Alyssa Liu. What did she said, that's how you fucking do it.
Yeah, yep. End quote. Yeah. End quote. Something that I am very interested in is, as you were collecting all of this information, organizing your book and setting it down into draft and everything, when you were looking at these numbers, was there anything that really stuck out to you that was unexpected or that surprised you in any of these trends where you're like, that is not what I expected, or wow, we're more powerful than we thought?
I think the thing that maybe surprised me, it's not necessarily numbers, but it's a story. So I read a lot of books in doing my research for this, for Swiftynomics, and a lot of books about women from the past. And I got so much inspiration from them, much more than I was ever expecting to. But I read this book about Frances Perkins, who's the first female Secretary of Labor for the United States during like the 1930s. And if you were to hear her story without knowing that she lived 100 years ago and not today, you would think that she is a woman of today. Like, she was sandwiched. She was caring for her elder mom and her teenage daughter while she was working as Secretary of State in D.C. And she had a spouse who had mental health issues that she was also caring for. And she just had all of these really like bombastic leadership positions, and she was really strategic and really determined. And, you read about her story and you're like, this is a woman from 100 years ago. And, because we are not good at documenting and telling the lived stories of women, that surprises, or at least I was surprised. And I think that her story would surprise, like, not her professional story, but like her actual life story, which is a combination of professional and personal. I think people would just be surprised at how much she just seems like a woman of today. And, that's one of the things for me is I wish we were better at documenting, women's real lived experiences, because I think if we were better at that, we'd probably be a little bit further on in terms of gender equity today than we are, just because, those stories fall to the wayside and then we forget about them, and then we have to start over in terms of building ourselves up and fighting for equality. So that would be like my most surprising piece for researching this book, was just all of the fascinating stories of all the women who have come before us.
Well, and isn't that the truth? We need to recognize, love, shine a light on all of the women in our past, because, my gosh, fight they did and fight we still are. And even though things may sound a little bit better, may look a little bit better in 2026, it is a wild time out here. We're not loving 2026. It is a very special time. And it is causing a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people, but something that always kind of stays steady is numbers. Numbers don't lie. Numbers ground us. And so we can look to numbers to kind of see where things are going to take us. And I turn to you as an economist and say, things are just kind of crazy. And is there anything that you take comfort in when you're looking at numbers? Is there something that really grounds you so you don't just kind of like spiral into, oh my gosh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in economic agency. And one thing that I think has been maybe inspiring or hopeful is if we look at labor force participation of women with children under the age of 5, it climbed post-pandemic, and it's actually still higher than it was pre-pandemic. It's the highest that it's probably ever been. And there's lots of reasons why that could be, but I think that's inspiring, because that means that the more women who have are generating income coming into their pockets themselves, the less of a hit they have on their future earnings, et cetera, et cetera. And so that makes me hopeful. And then I actually have a little bit of a twisted way to think about all of the current chaos. I think, I see what's going on in our environment in 2025 and now in 2026, and I feel like there's a lot of showism going on at the national level. There's a lot of chest-pounding broism in D.C. and a lot of really loud, hot air talk. And I think part of that is a reaction, and I think that it's a reaction, and, all of the attacks on reproductive rights and everything. I think for me, those are really reactions coming from a small group of folks who traditionally have had the most amount of power in society, and they are feeling threatened. And one of the reasons why they're feeling threatened is because of this shift in economic power that's going on with women and men. And so I look at all of the questionable and kind of negative stuff happening right now as maybe, in some way a positive light, because it means that things are changing and it's making people uncomfortable and they're reacting to it. And I believe that it's more, at the end of the day, it's going to be more hot air than anything else. If there's one thing we can learn from watching the women from the generations before us, it's that we never really go back. We might have a short setback in the short term, but we make sure the next generation has more opportunities than we do. So the example that I like to use is the Rosie the Riveter women from World War II. They went into these factories and built bombs for World War II when the men were off at war in Europe. And the federal government created universal child care so that all women could, as many women as possible could go and work in the factories and their kids would be taken care of. When the war ended, a lot of those women, it was expected that they would go back into their homes and just continue taking care of their kids and their family and their household. But the fact of the matter is they got a taste of what it was like to, have money coming directly into their pocket and having control over that. And the really rate of labor force participation for women after that accelerated, even though women were expected to go back home. And even the women who did go back home, they might have stopped working in the short run because, society expectations, family expectations, whatever, but they made sure that their daughters got an education and a good education where they could go and get careers instead of jobs or whatever it is. And so there's always going to be short run setbacks. That's just, I think, part of growth. And I think we're going through some growing pains right now. But I'm hopeful that it's not actually a reverse trend going in a different direction. I think we're just having to deal with people who are uncomfortable because their position in the world is they're having to share it now and they don't want to.
Men.
That's all I can say, really.
Men. It's always men.
To wrap all our conversations on a lighter note, because we're ending with hope, and we are asking you, what do you remember your first experience in contributing to the economy as a woman? Do you remember that first moment of girlhood and kind of sharing this is an experience that sticks with me?
Oh, that's a really fantastic question. Two things come to mind. The first one is all of the babysitting gigs I had as a teenager. And I used to babysit for one of my mom's friends every New Year's Eve. She would go out and I would babysit till 1 a.m. And I just remember that because I was so tired. And I would watch the ball drop from their, living room all by myself because kids were sleeping. But after that, it would be the first job that I had was at a pizza parlor. And they had an ice cream soda fountain thing. And I worked at the ice cream soda fountain. I was 15 at the time. But, those are all formal paid jobs, ways of interacting with the economy.
And your own source of that economic freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much for, I just sit and listen to you talk, and I get to, because I get to, you have your Swiftynomics book, available both in traditional physical copy, ebook, and on, available through audio as well.
Yes. All three formats.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Now, you mentioned a website. Is there anything that you would like to promote? Do you have anything coming up? Where can everybody find you? Please tell us.
Well, I'm currently doing a book tour. So you can go to Swiftynomics.com and you can find where you can purchase the book there. And you can also find where I'm at on book tour. MistyHeggeness.com is another place to find me on Instagram, LinkedIn. So, yeah, come find me.
So please make sure you're following Misty. We'll have all of her information in the show notes as well. And as always, please feel free to follow us on Instagram. We're at ACOFAE Podcast. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.